That smile a woman gives an older man? It's not politeness, it's not pity, and it is absolutely not accidental. Women don't hand those smiles out randomly, and the fact that most older men think they do is exactly why they keep misreading every single signal they receive. Let me tell you something that most people won't say out loud. Older men don't realize this is why women smile at them. And I mean that in the most loaded, layered way possible. Because what's actually happening in that moment, in that split second when a woman looks at a man who's lived a little, who has some gray at his temples and some quiet certainty in his posture, what's happening inside her is something that has almost nothing to do with what he thinks is going on. Most older men assume one of two things. Either they assume the smile means nothing, just social courtesy, just a woman being friendly the way women are. Or, on the other end, they get a little too hopeful, a little too eager, and they immediately overplay their hand. They lean in too fast. They start explaining themselves. They try too hard to be charming in a way that actually cancels out the very thing that made her smile in the first place. Both of these responses, the dismissal and the overreach, are rooted in the same misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding is this: most older men have no idea what they're actually projecting. They don't see what she sees. They can't feel what that smile is responding to. And here's where it gets interesting. Because what women are smiling at, what is actually triggering that reaction, is something most men in their 20s and 30s simply don't have yet. It can't be faked. It can't be learned from a book in a weekend. And ironically, the men who carry it most powerfully are often completely unaware that they have it at all. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to look at yourself and at those smiles completely differently. Let's start with a scenario. Picture two men walking into the same room, a casual social setting, maybe a dinner party or a work event. The first man is 29, good-looking, fit, well-dressed. He scans the room immediately, clocking who's noticing him, adjusting his posture when he spots an attractive woman. He's performing. Not badly, he's smooth about it, but he's performing. The second man is 54, not conventionally flashy. His suit fits well because he knows his body now, not because he spent an hour agonizing over it. He walks in, greets the host, pours himself a drink, and starts a real conversation with someone he finds genuinely interesting. He doesn't scan the room. He doesn't seem to need to. Now, who do you think the women in that room are watching? This is not a rhetorical trick. Study after study on social dynamics confirms what women already know intuitively. Presence is one of the most magnetic qualities a human being can possess. And presence, true, unperformed presence, is something that tends to arrive with age. The 29-year-old might be objectively more conventionally attractive, but he's broadcasting something that registers deep in the female psyche as need. The need for approval, the need to be seen. And women, whether they can articulate it or not, pick up on that frequency within seconds. The older man, he's broadcasting something entirely different. He's broadcasting sufficiency. And that word, sufficiency, is at the core of what older men don't realize they're carrying. Now here's what I want you to understand about that smile. When a woman smiles at an older man in a genuine way, not the polite, performative smile she gives to strangers, she's responding to a feeling. And that feeling is something like safety, mixed with intrigue, mixed with a very specific kind of challenge. Because here's the psychological truth. Women are deeply attracted to men they cannot immediately figure out. Men who don't need to announce themselves. Men who hold something back, not as a strategy, but simply because they're not anxious. Anxiety is the anti-magnet. And older men, the ones who've been through enough, who've built enough, who've lost enough and survived it, they tend to carry far less of it. Not zero, but less. And that reduction in social anxiety reads to women as power. Not aggression, not dominance in a loud sense, but a quiet, settled, unshakable sense of self. That's what the smile is for. She's not smiling because she feels sorry for him. She's not smiling because he reminds her of her father. She's smiling because something about him feels real in a world that is absolutely saturated with performance. Let me shift the frame here for a moment because this gets deeper. There's a concept in psychology called earned confidence, and it's distinct from the confidence young men often project, which is really just bravado, a kind of social armor. Earned confidence comes from a track record. It comes from having made decisions under pressure, from having failed and not collapsed, from having looked at yourself honestly and decided to keep going anyway. Women are extraordinarily attuned to the difference between these two types of confidence. They may not be able to explain it in clinical terms, but they feel it. Bravado has a faint smell of desperation to it. Earned confidence is odorless, weightless, and completely disarming. Here's the surprising fact that most people never talk about. Research on mate preferences shows that women across cultures consistently rate qualities like composure, social intelligence, and self-assuredness as more attractive over time, not less. Meaning the older a woman gets, the more she's calibrated to appreciate exactly what older men have developed. The two groups are, in some ways, on a slow-moving collision course of compatibility that neither one fully recognizes. But here's the trap. A lot of older men, when they start to sense female attention, when they start noticing more of those smiles, do something that completely undermines everything working in their favor. They start trying to seem younger. They start changing the things that are actually generating the attraction. They trade in their authentic cadence for something faster and more performative. They try to match the energy of men half their age, and women feel the shift immediately, not as an upgrade, as a loss, because what she was smiling at wasn't youth. It was the absence of the anxiety that comes with youth. The moment an older man starts chasing youth, he's back on the wrong frequency. Now let's talk about something that is rarely discussed in these spaces, and when it is, it tends to make people uncomfortable. Women are attracted to older men partly because of time, not time in a sentimental sense, time in a gravitational sense. A man who has lived 50 or 55 or 60 years has accumulated something that is invisible but immense, a density of experience that makes him feel heavier than men who are still becoming. And women, whether they articulate it this way or not, are drawn to that density. Think about it this way. A young man's energy is mostly future-facing. He is restless with potential. He is defined by what he might become, and that has its own electricity. Don't misunderstand me. But a man in his later decades has a different orientation. He is anchored in what is, not what might be. He is not waiting for his life to begin. His life has been happening fully and continuously, and that groundedness creates an effect on the people around him that is very difficult to fake. Women don't smile at him because he's impressive in a resume sense. They smile because being near him feels stabilizing. And stability, real, authentic, non-performative stability, is one of the most underrated forms of attraction on Earth. Here's where the real revelation lives. Most older men have been socially conditioned to read female attention through the lens of their younger years, when attraction was more transactional, more surface level, more loudly announced. So when a woman gives them that quieter, more layered smile, they either miss it entirely or they misinterpret it as something lesser than what it is. But that smile is more than what they received at 25. It's more layered, it's more considered, it's coming from a more discerning place. A younger woman smiling at an older man isn't confused about his age. She's not overlooking it. She's responding to it. The gray, the lines, the stillness, the ease, these aren't things she's tolerating. These are things she is drawn to. And that inversion, the idea that the very things an older man might be self-conscious about are actually doing the attracting, is something most men never fully absorb. Let me give you one more layer. There is a specific dynamic that older men activate without realizing it, and it's called the paradox of low pursuit. Here's how it works. Men who are young and hungry tend to over-pursue. They initiate too quickly, respond too eagerly, make their interest too obvious too fast. And this behavior, psychologically, reduces a woman's sense of being chosen. Because if he pursues everyone with this intensity, the pursuit means nothing. Older men, almost by default, pursue less, not because they're playing games, but because they've earned the patience to wait and see. They don't desperately need this particular woman to like them. And paradoxically, that is the most attractive stance possible. When a woman senses that an older man is genuinely interested in her, but genuinely unbothered by whether she reciprocates, she doesn't feel dismissed. She feels challenged, intrigued, and she leans in. He never intended to create that effect. He was just being himself. But that's the whole point. So here's the shift I want you to walk away with. Older men don't realize this is why women smile at them. And now you do. It's not charity. It's not confusion. It's not a fluke. It is a deeply calibrated response to something real, something earned, something that took decades to build and that most men are carrying around without ever seeing it. The gray isn't a liability. The quietness isn't a weakness. The patience isn't passivity. These are signals. And women, on a level that bypasses conscious thought, are reading them clearly. The biggest mistake an older man can make is to look at that smile and decide it means nothing. Or worse, to suddenly start trying to be someone he's not in order to deserve it. He already deserves it. He just needs to stop talking himself out of it. Here's the truth about attraction that no one tells men when they're young because they wouldn't have the context to understand it yet. The version of yourself that has been forged by real experience is more magnetic than the version that was just beginning. Not to everyone, not in every room, but in the right room, to the right woman, at the right moment. It is completely undeniable. That smile she gave you? Read it correctly. She wasn't being polite. She was noticing something. And now, finally, so are you. Now that you understand what's really behind that smile, what older men carry that they can't even see in themselves, there's something even deeper you need to know, because attraction is only one part of this. The other part is type. And it turns out, younger women aren't drawn to older men randomly. There are specific kinds of older men, defined by how they carry themselves, how they think, how they move through the world, that younger women find themselves almost helplessly drawn to. That video is right here. It's called 7 Types of Older Men Younger Women Secretly Desire, Psychology, Power, and Masculine Energy. Watch it next. What you learn might completely reshape how you see yourself.